Next is taxation. We need significantly higher taxation on extreme wealth, because one of the biggest problems we have, and most countries have this, not just America, is a widening gap between the extremely rich and the rest of the citizens. This is natural. This is what happens under capitalism. When you have unchecked capitalism and free market, what happens is that you have a ever-growing gap, and the middle class basically gets eroded. And this becomes very problematic. This is one of the biggest problems for a country, because then what you have is you have this giant disparity of interests and survival agendas, where you have people who are basically barely surviving and working 2 jobs just to feed their kids. And then you have fat cats at the top who are flying around on private jets and using their money to further corrupt the system. See, the problem is when you have too much money, more money than you really need for survival and basic luxuries and stuff, any money beyond that, that money tends to be squandered by egos. So my proposal is that anything over $1 million gets taxed quite heavily, and anything over 10 million or $1 billion gets taxed extremely heavily, because these people simply don't need that money, and they're actually squandering it, and they're actually using it to corrupt the system. See, that money needs to be put towards places that really need it to help elevate other people. And that overall will help to improve society. Society is not improved by having 1% of millionaires and billionaires who have all the power and all the wealth. This is not a healthy society. This is highly unbalanced, and it creates all sorts of problems that trickle through the whole system. Not only do we need to be taxing income, we need to be also taxing wealth, because a lot of these people will stash their wealth, hoard up huge amounts of wealth, and they're not using it to actually do good for society. And there's a lot of various kind of tax loopholes that they get away with, because we're taxing income is not actual wealth that's accumulated. So any wealth over, let's say, $10 million in cash or $100 million in cash, this wealth needs to be taxed every single year, maybe 1%, maybe 2%, 5%. I don't know. The percentages aren't important. We can figure that out. We could come to some kind of compromises. But this kind of extreme wealth definitely needs to be taxed, and especially extreme wealth of giant corporations. Giant corporations like Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, they're building up cash reserves of $50 billion, $100 billion. This is absurd. They don't even know what to do with this money. And then, of course, they use it to lobby and to corrupt and to make various kinds of schemes and buyouts and monopolies, which is all contributing to the problems we have. We need much higher estate taxes. The idea that you should be able to supply your children and offspring with tens of millions of dollars of inheritance, this is actually doing a disservice to them, because these people grow up after this inheritance, these trust fund babies and so forth. They don't have an appreciation of what it's like to actually earn a living, or to actually have to work hard for luxury, or to work hard for freedom. They don't understand. They can't empathize with people who have 2 jobs or are working minimum wage. And then, of course, those people grow up, and then they further corrupt the system, because they have these ideas that those people, they can just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They're just not working hard enough. No, it's not that people aren't working hard enough. It's that the system is highly rigged by the very wealthy people who benefit the most from the system. And that's perpetuated with these low estate taxes that we have. We also need much higher corporate taxes. Corporations are making a killing, especially giant multi-billion corporations. I think we should have multiple tiers of taxes, because we certainly don't want to disincentivize small business. A lot of times people make this improper conflation where they say, oh, Leo, but high corporate taxes, that will ruin the economy and slow down the economy and growth and all of this. No, it won't, because we're not going to, of course, have high corporate taxes on small businesses. So if you're running a donut shop and you have 5 or 10 employees, don't worry, you're not going to have high corporate taxes under what I'm proposing. What I'm talking about is high corporate taxes for giant companies that employ tens of thousands of people and who rake in tens of billions of dollars of profit every single year, right? So this is not small business. This is not even medium business. This is not even large business. This is gigantic, multinational billion business, right? That's what we're talking about here. So they need to have much higher corporate taxes. That's pretty self-explanatory. On the other hand, for people who are just starting businesses, just starting corporations that are only 5 employees, 10 employees, under 100 employees, these people need tax breaks. We need more competition. The way you incentivize competition is not by making the tax environment favorable to these giant corporations, but the opposite, making the tax environment favorable for small business. So I'm very, very pro small business and pro entrepreneurial. I think we need more of that. And in fact, the biggest problem I have with giant corporations is that they squeeze out the small businesses, making it very difficult to start your own entrepreneurial venture, meaning that then people have to become wage slaves because they have no other option. They can't start their own thing because Amazon or Walmart or Starbucks is squeezing them out. And then, of course, with their corporate lobbying power and all the politicians that they buy and they influence and the way they skew the system towards themselves, it becomes very difficult for individuals to compete and to start new businesses. And this is bad because then we don't have competition, we don't have innovation, we don't have creativity. And then people aren't able to steer their own lives, to be their own CEOs. They have to work as a lackey for some giant corporate CEO. And this is problematic because we do want to develop autonomy within people. We also need higher capital gains tax and passive income tax. Right now, the whole system is rigged in such a way that hard manual labor is taxed the most, yet manipulation of economy through stocks, arbitrage, derivatives trading, various kinds of mortgage schemes and all of this, various kinds of passive income where you don't work at all, and yet you earn millions of dollars and you hardly pay any tax on it. This is completely backwards. We need ordinary working people who work hard, doing manual labor and so forth. They should have the biggest tax breaks. Their income and their wages should be taxed the least. Whereas people who just sit around and collect passive income from owning real estate or from rentals, these people need to be taxed a lot more because they're not actually providing much value to the system. They're actually leeching off the system. Because in a society, really, it's the people who are doing actually all the labor and work. And of course, labor isn't just physical labor, but it's also creative labor. They're the ones who are really driving society and getting the stuff done. And those people who are just sitting and getting a bunch of money from rental properties, they're not doing very much. They're leeching off the system. And this is not recognized right now in our hyper-capitalist society. We also need to eliminate a bunch of tax loopholes and safe havens. You should not be able to move a bunch of money overseas to Ireland the way that Apple has been doing, billions of dollars, $50 or $100 billion sitting in Irish banks to avoid taxation, or to the Caribbean, to the Bahamas, and all these sorts of shenanigans. This all needs to be closed. If you want to be an American company and do business in America, you need to store the bulk of your funds in American banks, and it's going to be regulated by American bureaucracy, by the government, and all your wealth is going to be tracked, and then some percentage of it is going to be taxed if it's excessive, and you're going to pay taxes on it, and there's not going to be all sorts of corporate loopholes.